I found myself unexpectedly cast as a wealthy bystander in a story about genuine and fake heirs, and my mission was clear: to steer the future villainess, a fake heir, onto a better path and ensure her happiness. I took her in and nurtured her from a young age, teaching her the importance of lawfulness and good character, transforming her from a villainess into someone worthy of the male lead's pure affection. Beyond simply helping the elderly cross the street, her interests included donating to disaster-stricken areas, and in no time she had captured Jonah's heart. Just when it seemed like she was about to marry him and live happily ever after, the real heiress declared her love for me, and suddenly, the fake heiress revealed her true, darker side. "Brother, if you choose anyone else, I'll lock you away so no one can see you," she warned. It was only then that I realized she had been hiding her true nature from the start. Her seemingly innocent, little white flower persona was just an act meant for me. "Brother, I've been dreaming about Jonah lately," Elise said, pouting as she complained to me. Jonah, the male lead of the story, was the one she had set her sights on, and hearing her words told me that the plot was beginning to unfold. I had found myself in this novel about real and fake heirs, not as a major player, but as a rich bystander with the task of preventing Elise, the fake heiress, from descending into darkness and to ensure her happiness. In the original version of the story, Elise had been in love with Jonah but was never able to win his affection. Her life ended tragically in a blaze of fire. Now, as the plot began to take shape, Elise had already started dreaming of Jonah, proof of the male lead's powerful influence over the story. "After all, he's our classmate, and he's quite handsome. It's not unusual to dream about him," I said, patting her head while setting breakfast on the table. "Here, eat up, Elise." "Brother, you're much better looking than him. If I have to dream about someone, it should be you," she teased, sticking out her tongue and making a cute face at me. She looked so pure and innocent, so different from the cruel villainess in the book. It had been 10 years since I arrived in this world, and 10 years since I took Elise in and raised her like a sister. My mission seemed to be going well. She was happily heading to university, her happiness meter at 60. Once she graduated and managed to win Jonah's heart, reaching a happiness level of 100, I'd be free to return to my original world. After breakfast, we headed to school together. I was only a year older than Elise, so I'd delayed my enrollment to be in the same class. Now, as our first year began, the story was officially kicking off. Jonah, the male lead, and both the real and fake heiresses, the three pivotal characters, were finally about to meet. Sure enough, after class, Mia approached and took Elise's hand. "Elise, you're the child who was mistakenly taken by the Carter family, right?" she asked. Elise gave her a puzzled look before nodding. "It was me and you, who were mixed up back then. I'm Mia. After we were switched back, we played together a lot. Do you remember?" Mia's words brought a warm smile to Elise's face. "Of course I remember. You're only a day older than me, and you told me you wanted to be my sister." Mia gave her a tight, excited hug. "It's a shame, though. When I went to the Carter family to find you later, you weren't there. I heard that Madame Carter had sent you to an orphanage. I had no idea how you'd been all these years." The Carter and Liu families were both well-known and influential in Yuncheng, but Elise was the illegitimate daughter of the Carter family, while Mia was the legitimate daughter of the Liu family, adored by all. Their statuses had always been worlds apart, especially after Elise's return to the Carter family when Madame Carter, upon discovering her existence, had sent her straight to the orphanage. In the original version of the story, even though the Carter family had eventually taken Elise back and provided her with wealth, her years in the orphanage had haunted her forever. Thankfully, I arrived just in time to take her in the day she was sent away. Elise smiled at Mia and then glanced at me, her eyes lighting up. "My brother took me home the very first day I went to the orphanage. I've been living well ever since." Mia turned her gaze toward me, and I caught the briefest flicker of something odd in her expression before it disappeared. She smiled politely at me. "I consider Elise to be my sister," Mia said. "Since you helped her, you've helped our Liu family. If you ever need anything from me in the future, don't hesitate to ask." Mia had always been portrayed as a sweet, caring character, concerned for everyone. But if she had really cared about Elise back then, why had Elise spent so many lonely years in the orphanage? In the original story, money had been the root cause of Elise's misery. Money could solve almost any problem, and the lack of it caused the remaining issues. To ensure the smooth completion of my mission, the system had granted me enough funds to cover anything Elise might need. I didn't require any help from the Leo family. I simply smiled and shook my head, choosing not to respond to Mia's offer. What I hadn't expected, however, was for Mia to show up later that evening, accompanied by her mother, inviting Elise and me to visit their home. Elise, being the kind-hearted person she was, couldn't bring herself to refuse. She turned to me for approval, and after a nod from me, we climbed into the car bound for the Leo family's estate. In the original version of the story, Elise had stayed with the Leo family for 8 years, but after she turned 8, she no longer experienced the warmth of family. 10 years later, when she walked into the Leo family's house at 18, she found herself a mere outsider, an insignificant figure, while her real parents doted on their biological daughter. They treated her like a guest, with politeness but no affection. This visit marked the moment when Elise's descent into darkness began in the original story. She began to envy, hate, and resent Mia, feeling as though her parents had been stolen from her. However, in this version of events, I made sure Elise was not deprived of love, and she had grown into a confident, compassionate young woman. Mia's mother had ordered a feast from a 5-star restaurant, but Mia was visibly annoyed. "Mom, didn't you say you were going to cook today?" she complained. Her mother smiled gently. "I was worried Elise might not be used to my cooking, so I ordered in. But you only cook once a week. Since we didn't get to eat your cooking today, can you make my favorite dish next time? How about a chicken vegetable dish tomorrow?" Mia continued with a request. Her mother smiled and agreed, saying, All right, I'll make it for you tomorrow." Mia beamed and then turned to Elise, saying, "You have no idea how much better my mom's cooking is compared to a 5-star chef's, but she doesn't think so herself. I guess that's what love tastes like." In the original story, this moment would have deeply hurt Elise. Mia's mother used to dote on her, but now she couldn't even taste the warmth of her cooking. However, the current Elise was different. She smiled at me and said, "My brother also thinks his cooking is terrible, but I love it." "Lucas, you can cook? That's amazing! Elise, you're lucky to have a brother like him," Mia exclaimed with surprise. Elise nodded happily. "Yes, my brother has been cooking for me since I was little. His food is the best." Back in my previous life, as a low-wage worker, expensive takeout wasn't cost-effective, and the cheap options left me worried about food safety, so I'd always cooked for myself. After arriving in this world, I tried hiring a few nannies for Elise, but she didn't like any of them, so I ended up cooking for her myself. Honestly, I thought my cooking was barely edible, certainly not gourmet, but Elise loved it and never left a bite behind. "Lucas, I'd love to try your cooking sometime. Next time let me visit your place and don't forget to make something delicious for me," Mia joked. "No way," Elise frowned. "My brother's cooking is only for me." Mia's mother quickly intervened to ease the tension, praising me. When the Carter family sent Elise away, we couldn't care for her properly because of Madame Carter's influence. We had no news of her all these years. We're really grateful to you, Lucas. On the way home, Elise clung to my arm and sighed. "Brother, when I was little, I often wondered why I didn't have parents who loved me. But now, I think having you is enough. No one else matters." She looked up at me with shining eyes, a look I couldn't quite understand. In that moment, it hit me. She wasn't just a character I needed to save, but a little girl I had truly redeemed. The plot of this story was rather old-fashioned and cliché. Although Jonah, the male lead, was engaged to Elise later on, he was drawn to the kind-hearted Mia. To help Elise win Jonah's affection, I had raised her to be a kind person from the start. Now, she was brave enough to help elderly people who were hit by cars and donate all her pocket money to children in remote areas. In class, she was always ready to help others, shining like a little sun. She was kinder than the female lead, and besides studying, her mind was always filled with charitable thoughts, almost as if she had an internal, be a good person system installed. Halfway through her first semester of college, Elise had already become the class favorite, thanks to her striking looks and friendly personality. In the original story, this role had belonged to Mia, the female lead. Elise had even suffered bullying in school because of her reclusive nature and beauty, but it seemed that characters really did determine their destinies. The mission was progressing smoothly. Jonah, the male lead, even started asking me about Elise's opinion of him, hoping I would put in a good word for him. "Elise, what do you think of Jonah?" I casually asked as we took a walk in the park one weekend. "Not kind enough. Last time an old lady fell and he didn't help her," Elise replied. I was momentarily speechless before asking, "What if he likes you? What would you think of that?" "I'd keep my eyes open. Closing them might make me trip," she snorted. "Brother, didn't you say we should focus on our studies?" "But Jonah is different. He's the male lead, our target," I tried to explain, attempting to come up with something good to say about him. Elise interrupted me. "Brother, I don't like him. I just want to focus on my studies now. Besides, except for you, everyone else in the world is the same to me." I couldn't help but wonder why this plot was different from the original story. In the book, Elise was madly in love with Jonah. I sighed, realizing I would have to find another way to bring Jonah and Elise together. Jonah really liked Elise and always followed her around, giving her gifts every day. I told him that Elise thought he wasn't kind enough for not helping the fallen old lady, so he spent the entire day helping 100 elderly men, only to be scammed for 88,000. After Jonah lost his cool, Mia began acting strangely as well. She started to cling to me, joining us for meals nearly every day. But wasn't she supposed to be in love with Jonah? It seemed as though Jonah had lost his male lead halo. One day, when Elise wasn't around, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Mia, why do you stick to me every day? Do you like me?" I asked. To my surprise, she nodded seriously. "Yes," she replied, grabbing my hand. "Why don't we be together?" Just then, I spotted Elise walking toward us from the corner of my eye. I quickly pulled my hand away and took 2 steps back. "Brother Mia, what were you two doing behind my back?" Elise asked as she walked up to us. "Nothing, let's go eat," I quickly explained, but Mia raised an eyebrow at me in a way I didn't quite understand. I thought this was just a moment of impulsiveness for Mia. After all, the female lead should be attracted to the male lead, not to me, a bystander. But it seemed like she was serious about being with me, confessing her feelings several more times. "We're still students. I just want to focus on my studies. Besides, what is it about me that you like?" I rejected her again. "Because you're a bystander not controlled by the plot." Mia shrugged and explained, "Stop pretending. In this world, except for you and me, everyone else is an NPC, including Jonah. They don't have their own thoughts at all." She sighed, her gaze turning more intense. "I just want to be with someone who has a mind of their own." I couldn't believe it. Mia, the female lead, had awakened. I was at a loss for words. This was not good. An awakened person could disrupt everything and cause my mission to fail. Seeing my silence, Mia continued, "I awakened at a young age. Everyone else just follows the plot without realizing it. The ridiculous thing is, they think it's their own choice, but I know better. Until I met you." Her gaze softened, growing more passionate. "You're a character outside the novel, and you changed, Elise. You're the only one besides me who has self-awareness in this world. So why shouldn't we be together?" I shook my head in disagreement. "They just don't know. This isn't just a novel, but that doesn't mean the characters lack awareness. Elise has changed because of me. She's no longer the Elise from the book. She's a real person now, shaped by her experiences and developing into a different individual." "Let me guess," Mia said, flashing a confident smile. "Your purpose for coming here is to save Elise, right? Well, let me help destroy her." I was stunned. Mia, now that she had awakened, meant every word she said. Just the day before, she and Elise had been friends, but the moment I rejected her confession, Mia immediately started her revenge. She altered photos of Elise, spreading rumors that she was attending a prestigious school, sponsored by an older man, and that my relationship with Elise wasn't innocent. The rumors spread like wildfire, turning Elise into the talk of the town. But Elise wasn't worried. She pulled out her donation receipts and bank statements, proving that the money she had was from my allowance. She didn't buy expensive things. Instead, she donated everything she could. The gossip quickly died down. After all, no gold digger would give away their money to help children in the mountains. As for the rumors about us, Elise simply smiled and told everyone, "If I could be with my brother, that would be even better. After all, we're not related by blood." I was completely taken aback. Despite Mia knowing the plot of the novel inside and out, her methods were ridiculously childish, like something a school kid would do. She even put cockroaches in Elise's desk. Elise calmly crushed them with a tissue, but when she saw me approaching, she screamed, "Brother, it's so scary. Come comfort me." I stood there speechless. On Friday, after Elise was on duty at school, I noticed she hadn't returned home for dinner. I went back to the school to look for her and found that Mia had locked her in a classroom. "Brother, Mia likes you. She's bullying me to be with you," Elise said, sounding pitiful. "I'll try to talk to her again." I sighed deeply. Mia seemed to be losing her mind. Maybe it was because, from a young age, she had known this world was a kind of Truman Show, making her collapse. But that didn't excuse her actions. I couldn't understand why the sweet, kind-hearted female lead was acting like this. All I wanted was to protect Elise and make sure my mission stayed on track. She keeps talking about main characters and supporting characters. Do you understand what she's talking about, brother? Elise eyed me carefully, and for a moment I thought she might know something. But I could only shake my head, signaling that I had no idea either. "So, you don't know what she's talking about?" Elise sighed and said, "Well, it doesn't really matter. This should end now. She's just asking for too much. This greedy woman should have been out of our lives a long time ago." I didn't think much of Elise's words at the time, assuming it was just her venting. But then, on the weekend, I got a call from the police station. Elise had been pushed off the library roof by Mia. I rushed to the hospital, finding Elise lying there pale yet still smiling at me. "Brother, it's done. She won't show up before us again." Sunlight filtered in through the window, casting a warm glow on her face. Her amber eyes and long lashes left soft shadows on her cheeks, making her look almost angelic. For the past few days, she had kept saying she wanted Mia out of her life, but I never imagined she would go this far. Today must have been a trap she set to provoke Mia into pushing her off the roof. Otherwise, Mia, being so timid, would never have done it. It suddenly hit me that perhaps I hadn't changed Elise after all. She was still the same ruthless character who would harm herself to achieve her goals, just like in the novel. Looking at her frail form, I felt a mix of heartbreak and sorrow. "Why? There are other ways," I said, my voice bitter. "She dared to dream of stealing my brother. Of course, this greedy woman needs to be locked up, properly reformed." Elise smiled sweetly at me, trying to reassure me. "Brother, it's all right. It's just the 4th floor, a minor fracture. Can you promise me you won't hurt yourself anymore?" I suddenly thought back to the original ending, where she threw herself and Jonah into the flames just to have him all to herself. This was the girl I had raised, and I couldn't bear seeing her destroy herself like this. "Then, brother, you must promise me one thing. Don't let any other women get close to you, or I'll go crazy," she said seriously, locking eyes with me. My heart skipped a beat, and I forced a smile. We'll both have people we like and start families of our own one day. "But I only like you, brother. You're my family. I want to marry you." Elise stared at me, her gaze intense, as if she were afraid I'd miss any hint of what she was feeling. Just like when she asked for toys as a child, she always looked at me that way whenever she wanted something, making it impossible to refuse. I had noticed her feelings for me, but I never imagined them to be so direct and strong. Unlike Mia, Elise hadn't awakened. Her feelings for me had overridden the plot, breaking free from her instinct to fall for the male lead and defying her fate. But this wasn't how it was meant to be. I wasn't her destined one. I was just a wandering soul filling an NPC role, wanting to return to my real world. This wasn't my story. I shook my head at her. "Elise, you're still young. You don't understand what real love is. You only depend on me." She didn't argue, but instead smiled a little, her eyes cold and strange. "Brother, you don't like me, do you?" "Not in that way." I hardened my heart and nodded. "Yes, I only see you as my sister. Saying those words, a pang of sadness pierced me. I felt awful, afraid she'd be hurt. She was the girl I had raised, yet I didn't deserve her. All I could do was watch as she found someone else. She lowered her gaze, her long lashes trembling, her look unreadable. All right. In that case, I'll return to the Carter family after I leave the hospital. Thank you for these 10 years, brother. I'll repay you for them, Elise said. She was the long-lost daughter of the Carter family. Originally, because Madame Carter couldn't accept her existence, she was sent to an orphanage. But after Madame Carter passed away a few years ago, the Carter family had tried repeatedly to bring Elise back. In the original story, Elise was also brought back from the orphanage by the Carter family when she was in high school, and she got engaged to Jonah while in college. But before then, Elise had always resisted the Carter family's advances, preferring to stay with me. But this time, it was different. She told me she wanted to leave and return to her original home. I gave her a bittersweet smile and finally nodded. As long as you're happy. True to her word, Elise contacted the Carter family the day she was discharged from the hospital, asking them to come pick her up. To celebrate her return, the Carter family even hosted a banquet in her honor. She officially severed ties with me and became their daughter. In a way, the plot was moving in the right direction. This made it more likely for her to marry Jonah. But strangely, I felt an emptiness inside me once she left. Elise seemed deeply hurt by me. After giving me a large sum of money, she blocked all my contact information, treating me like a stranger at school, walking past me without so much as a glance. Mia was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and the Liu family fell from grace. The Carter, Lam, and Liu families had once balanced each other out, but with the downfall of the Liu family, the Carter and Lam families quickly moved to divide the power. They arranged for an engagement between Elise and Jonah as part of a political marriage. Elise is so ungrateful. Her brother treated her so well before, and now that she's with the Carter family, she doesn't care about him at all. Yeah, I thought she was kind, but now she seems like a real ingrate. I heard she cut ties with Lucas as soon as she returned. I can't believe she's like this. Occasionally, classmates would gossip about us, with Elise always being the one criticized. I couldn't stand it anymore and walked over to explain. It's not what you think. I heard Elise first, I said, even though we no longer had a relationship. I couldn't bear to hear anyone speak ill of her. The Carter family, large and powerful, had complex interests. Knowing the plot of the original book, I understood that Elise wasn't having an easy time now. Her happiness level had dropped from 60 to 40 in less than a month. I returned to an empty house, my mind filled with memories of Elise. There was no one there to pester me to cook for her, no one there to chat beside me. But as long as she married Jonah, I could return to my original world. Wasn't that my goal? Yet my heart felt so hollow, like something essential was missing. I scrolled through our old chat records in a daze, but the conversation window was long blocked by her, leaving only red exclamation marks. Under the Carter family's plan, Elise went abroad, and Jonah, deeply in love with her, followed. Jonah had once asked me to help him make an impression on Elise, but now it was my turn to ask him to report back on her situation. Every time he told me she couldn't get used to the food abroad and had lost weight, I felt a pang of heartache. So I taught Jonah how to cook a few home dishes and gave him recipes to occasionally cook for Elise. She still likes my cooking. She told me it tastes like home, Jonah reported excitedly after his first successful attempt. I forced a smile. As long as she likes it, make sure she eats more. Although she still doesn't like me, she agreed to let me cook for her once a week, Jonah added. I gave him more recipes for Elise's favorite dishes. I couldn't just see her as a secondary character. We had relied on each other for 10 years. Every day without her, I worried about whether she was sick or hungry. I sent her many messages, but she never replied. Once, when Jonah mentioned my name in front of her, Elise threw a fit, telling him never to bring me up again. I didn't understand why she treated me like this, just because I didn't return her feelings. But without her, I felt like a walking corpse, unable to enjoy food or anything else. I realized I must have feelings for her, but we weren't from the same world. I was just an NPC, wanting to return home. This wasn't my world. After graduating from university, Elise and Jonah returned to the country. Though Elise still didn't like Jonah, under her influence, he became involved in charity work and seemed quite happy. I had no family or friends in this world. Since Elise left, I lost my purpose. Time seemed to erase everything, and over the years I grew accustomed to being alone again. But occasionally, passing by places we used to visit together, a wave of sadness would wash over me. Elise, indeed the strongest villain in this book, had transformed from a love-struck girl into a career-driven woman. Within a year of returning, she had taken full control of the Carter family. Elise had become the head of the Carter family but didn't break off her engagement. Even though no one in the Carter family could dictate her fate anymore, I thought she might still have feelings for Jonah, or was simply used to his presence. After all, the power of the plot was hard to change. However, Jonah told me their marriage was nothing but a contract. Elise still wouldn't accept him, but over the years he had become more relaxed, finding charity work more meaningful than pursuing love. They were now just charity partners, working together every month, doing good deeds. He no longer had romantic feelings for Elise and felt they were better suited as friends. Elise says she has someone she likes. Over the years I've gotten used to it. Now I find charity work more fulfilling than loving her. After I marry Elise, I'll leave the Carter family to her and devote myself entirely to charity. After all, rather than liking kind people, it's better to become one myself, Jonah said calmly. His words made sense. To like a certain type of person, you should first become that type yourself, instead of depending on someone else. The Carter and Lamb families were now the two most powerful families. With only a few months left until the wedding, the media had already started covering it extensively. I never imagined that to learn about the person I had raised, I would have to rely on the media. Elise's happiness level gradually dropped to 30, and aside from that, I had no information about her. The day before the wedding, I was kidnapped. I thought it was for money, but when I opened my eyes, I saw Elise standing in front of me. She had become more mature and beautiful compared to the innocent girl from a few years ago. Her hair flowed in large waves, and her makeup was delicate, appropriate. "Brother, long time." She squinted at me, looking somewhat condescending, but at that moment, her happiness level, which had been in the 30s, suddenly soared to 80. What was happening? Was it because the wedding was less than 24 hours away? "Congratulations on your wedding," I said, surprised that she had brought me here in this way, especially after blocking all my attempts to contact her before. "I'm not planning to get married," she replied, shaking her head as she lowered her eyes. "I'm going to disappoint you. Maybe you won't be able to go back to your original world." I looked at her in confusion. Had she awakened too? "Mia told me the plot of this world," she explained. "I knew in college that your kindness toward me was just part of your mission. All these years it was fake. You needed to complete the task to return home." She gave a self-mocking smile. "You always tried to pair me with Jonah. You thought that only by marrying him could you complete your mission. I guessed that, so I severed ties with you and got engaged to Jonah. I wanted to sacrifice myself to send you home." Hearing her words made my heart tremble, and my fingertips dug into my palms. Elise had sacrificed so much for me. "Brother, I blocked you because I couldn't control myself from missing you. I wanted you so badly, but I also wanted you to go home. I was afraid you'd lose your loved ones like I did. Afraid you'd suffer like me." Without thinking, I reached out and patted her back, just like I used to comfort her as a child. No matter what happened, she would always be the little girl who needed me. She bit her lip and looked at me hesitantly. "But I awakened yesterday," she continued, her voice softening. "I found out that your task is connected to my happiness level. Didn't you notice that despite gaining the Carter family and getting engaged to Jonah, my happiness level still fell instead of rising?" I nodded. That was true. Her happiness level had been low for years, but she refused to see me, so I thought it was because she was suffering in the Carter family. "Elise," I said softly, "because only you can give me happiness," she whispered. "I don't want you to just be my brother anymore, Lucas. Only by being with you will my happiness level rise. Since that's the case, I won't hold back my feelings anymore, whether you like me or not." She climbed onto my shoulders and pressed her lips to mine. In that moment, I began to confront my feelings for Elise. I realized that I, too, had feelings for her. For so long I had held back, constrained by the plot. never thinking about getting involved in this world. But she was so brave. Why should I keep retreating? With her in this world, why should I insist on going back? I decided to give up the task. However, she didn't believe in my feelings. Even when I confessed my love for her, she still thought I was trying to deceive her, to raise her happiness level so I could return to my original world. On her birthday, I cooked longevity noodles for her and prepared a candlelit dinner. She drank a little, her cheeks flushed, and looked at me with confusion. "Don't try to trick me, Lucas," she said, her voice slightly slurred. "I will never let go of you. If you love someone else, I will lock you up. I won't allow you to return to your own world." I patted her head gently. "Silly, I won't go back. The place where you are is my world." I didn't know if it was because she had been abandoned as a child, but Elise had no sense of security. Her happiness level rose to 99 but never moved again. I think she still didn't believe I would stay with her in this world, deliberately holding back that final point of happiness to prevent me from completing the task. All I wanted was to treat her well and make up for the lost years. We had a grand wedding, and Jonah handed over the company to us before leaving to teach in the mountains, happily focused on his work. Rumors spread that Jonah had lost all hope after being jilted, but for those involved, it was all just a joke. One day, while Elise and I were shopping, we suddenly saw Mia, freshly released from prison, holding a knife in front of us. She rushed toward Elise, her mouth full of curses. "It's all your fault, you evil supporting character! Because of you, I lost everything! Go to hell!" she screamed, the knife glinting coldly as it lunged toward us. In an instant, I threw myself in front of Elise, feeling a sharp coldness in my abdomen as blood gushed out. "Lucas!" Elise's voice cracked with panic. She held me, trembling as she tried to press down on the wound. Mia was subdued by security, but she continued to curse. Feeling the loss of blood, my consciousness began to fade. "Don't die, Lucas. I was wrong. I shouldn't have kept you in this world," Elise cried, her voice filled with anguish. As they pushed me into the ambulance, Elise's happiness level suddenly reached 100. A choice to return to my original world appeared before my eyes. "Brother, if you want to go, hurry up and go. You can't die. Please don't love me. I don't want you to stay with me." Elise's voice trembled, almost pleading. I knew she was afraid I would die, forcing herself to reach 100 happiness to let me go while I still had a breath left. But if I chose to go back, would I ever see her again? I didn't know if this body could survive in my original world, but if I left, I would lose her forever. I decided to gamble, either die or live and stay with her. I couldn't accept a world without Elise. It would be better to die. With that thought, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I saw Elise sitting by my bed, her eyes swollen from crying. "Lucas, are you an idiot?" she said through tears, her voice shaky. I raised my hand to wipe the tears from her cheek. "Why are you crying? If that knife had gone 2 centimeters deeper, you wouldn't have survived," she said, holding my hand tightly. "Why didn't you go back? You could have at that time." I interrupted her, shaking my head. "A world without you is no different from being dead." Her eyes reddened, and she looked at me like a wronged little rabbit. "Now, do you believe I really love you? I'm not going back." I intertwined my fingers with hers, and she nodded before gently kissing my cheek. "Lucas, I love you. I love you too. You are my whole world. Even if I have to give up everything, I will never give up on you.